Chapter 1: The Impossible Vault. The aroma of garlic, fresh basil, and simmering San Marzano tomatoes was Leo Vance's personal definition of sanctuary. He sat at his usual corner table at La Lanterna, a small, unpretentious restaurant tucked away on a quiet city side street. The checkered tablecloth was worn, the Chianti bottle was half empty, and the plate in front of him held the last perfect bite of Marco Rossi's signature osso buco. This place was an anchor in his turbulent world, a genuine corner of the city untouched by the cold, glass and steel ambition that defined his daily battles. "Another masterpiece, Marco," Leo called out as the chef himself passed by the table. Marco Rossi, a man whose kindness was etched into the weary lines around his eyes, managed a faint smile. "You are too kind, Leo. My wife says I should charge you double for the flattery alone." But the usual warmth in his voice was absent, replaced by a brittle tension that coiled at his shoulders. He was wringing a dishcloth in his hands, his knuckles white. Leo set his fork down, his senses sharpening. He hadn't become the city's most effective and most feared legal consultant by missing details. "Everything, all right, Marco. You look like you just saw a health inspector with a grudge." Marco's smile crumbled completely. He glanced around the Narinti dining room, then pulled a chair over, his movements heavy. "Worse, Leo, much worse." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a strained whisper. "It's the lease. It's Silas Croft." A name landed on the table like a slab of spoils meat. Silas Croft, the city's apex predator. A real estate tycoon who didn't just buy properties. He devoured them, leaving a trail of shuttered businesses and broken lives in his wake. Leo felt a familiar cold fire ignite in his gut. He built his new career on the ashes of men like Croft, corporate bullies who saw people like Marco not as human beings, but as entries on a balance sheet. "He bought the building 6 months ago," Marco continued, his voice trembling. "My lease is up at the end of the month. He won't renew, he says. He says he has a new tenant, a big international bank that wants the whole ground floor." "That's his right, Marco. As predatory as it is," Leo said, his mind already sorting through the legal angles. "He has to give you notice, but he doesn't have to renew. What's the problem?" Marco swallowed hard, his eyes darting towards the back of the restaurant. "The clause, the one my father signed 40 years ago. Tenant must return the premises to their original state upon vacating." Leo frowned. "Standard language." "It just means you have to take your kitchen, your tables, your fixtures." "No," Marco interrupted, a raw edge of panic in his voice. He pointed a trembling finger. "That." Leo followed his gaze. At the very back of the dining room, built into the rear wall, stood a colossal piece of history. A turn-off-the-century bank vault. It was a magnificent beast of steel and brass, at least 10 feet tall, its door a foot thick with intricate locking mechanisms. When Marco's father had first leased the space, it had been a defunct bank branch. He'd cleverly incorporated the vault into the restaurant's decor, turning it into a unique wine cellar. It was a landmark. It was also, Leo instantly realized, an anchor chaining Marco to financial ruin. "The building was an empty shell before my father put in the kitchen. The walls, everything," Marco explained, his words tumbling out in the rush of despair. "The original state means an empty box. Croft is holding me to it. I have to remove the vault." Leo felt the air go out of the room. 100 tons of solid steel embedded in the very foundation of the building. He'd heard of predatory landlords, but this was a master class in cruelty. "I got a quote," Marco whispered, his face ashen. "Just to get a team in here, cut it apart and haul it away. It's over $300,000. "Leo, that's everything." "It's my life savings. It's the money for my daughter's surgery." His voice broke. "He knows I can't pay it. He wants to seize my assets, my equipment, everything as compensation. He wants to bleed me dry for sport." Leo picked up the lease agreement Marco slid across the table. His fingers traced the crisp, legalistic text. It was perfect, ironclad, a beautifully constructed guillotine designed to sever a man from his livelihood. There were no loopholes, no ambiguities. It was a trap, sprung 40 years after it was set. He felt the phantom rage rise in him, The same rage he'd felt when his old firm hung his mentor, Aaron, out to dry for daring to expose a client's corruption. They had used the letter of the law to suffocate the spirit of it, and Croft was doing the exact same thing. He looked from the legal document to the desperate face of his friend, then back to the immovable 100-ton problem at the back of the room. For a moment, even he felt the weight of its impossibility. Legally, Marco was finished. But then, as Leo stared at the vault, something else began to happen. It was his gift, his curse, his cheat code. The world of black and white legal text began to fade, replaced by a different spectrum of colors only he could see. He didn't just see a legal problem anymore, he saw a psychological one. He pictured Silas Croft, a man he knew only by reputation, a gluttonous, preening narcissist whose greed was as legendary as his wealth. And in his mind's eye, Leo saw a shimmering, golden aura around the vault. It wasn't the gleam of brass, it was the glow of pure, uncut avarice. The vault wasn't just a physical object, it was a symbol. To Marco, it was a liability, a crushing weight, but to a man like Silas Croft, what was it to him? A weakness. The vault wasn't the trap was Croft's own insatiable greed. The very thing that made him feel powerful and untouchable was a flaw in his armor. The bigger the ego, the larger the blind spot. Croft had designed the problem, but Leo could see that he had failed to understand the value of the problem itself. A slow, dangerous smirk spread across Leo's lips, chasing the anger from his face. It was the look of a predator who had just spotted the perfect, fatal vulnerability in its prey. Marco saw the shift in his expression and recoiled slightly, mistaking the cold confidence for dismissal. "It's hopeless, isn't it?" he breathed, his last sliver of hope dying. "We're ruined." Leo leaned forward, his eyes, now sharp and intense, locking onto Marco's. The scent of garlic and basil seemed to have been replaced by the electric tang of ozone before a storm. "No, Marco," Leo said, his voice a low, steady hum of Newtown purpose. "He thinks he's trapped you with 100 tons of steel." He tapped a single, decisive finger on the table. "But what he's really done is handed us the weapon we're going to use to bury him."